my thought process is that the farm is a incubator for entrepreneurship. And if I've been successful at anything in my career, it's that I'm capable of understanding the talents that other people have well before they even understand the talents, and then just constantly nursing that. Like, how can I just like make the conditions as simple and easy as possible, and then take sometimes their scope, which is like, I want to be this, I don't want that, I want to do it here, I want to live everywhere in the world, and then bring it back to like just this one, like, okay, let's get really fucking good. I'm doing this with Leo. Let's get really fucking good at making video podcasts. Like, just be world class at that. And if we do that right, everything else is gonna come.
Yeah.
And so I try and encourage people's ideas, and the way I see it is like, I'm farming, garlic and making honey and a bunch of other stuff we're doing at the farm. But inherently, the number one thing that I'm constantly doing, and I told you this many times when it comes to marketing, is I'm hunting for talent. I'm constantly farming talent. And I'm constantly like shaping and trying to like not, and there's like a moral element to this where it's like, how much do you shape, but then how much do you like step back and say, actually, okay, I think now it's got a mind of its own. Like, it's like, at what point do I like stop you and be like, okay, Garrett, I don't think you're doing the right thing, or maybe nah. And then at what point I'm like, you know what? Now at this point, Garrett's going to be the tree that he's going to be. You know what I mean? That's still a question I sometimes have. But I've gotten really successful at doing that and removing the financial pressure of the startup by giving them conditions that are literally almost overly generous. And why I say almost overly generous is not because I think I should be less generous. It's that if the conditions if there's not enough pressure, they won't grow.
Yeah.
So there has to be a little, like I'll give the example back to plants. If you grow a tomato plant in a greenhouse, but you never do what is called hardening them off, you never put them outside and have them deal with the real wind and the real cold and the real rain, they're actually a weaker plant than if they actually dealt. Like, they can grow in the perfect environment of the greenhouse, but they also have to go out into the real world and deal with like the brutality of what comes with the real world at times. And I think that's where I've gotten better at that.
Talk about the hero's journey of a tomato plant. I love it. Yeah. Leaving the garden center. Yeah. I leave it in the bed of my truck. Let it just hit the wind on the way back home. Get it real toughed up.
I mean, it's I think it's a real thing.
Yeah.
I think it's a real thing. I mean, it's definitely a real concept in the world of farming, but I also think it's the same is true of entrepreneurship and of startup culture, is that sometimes the pressure cooker makes or breaks it. In many people's cases, most people's cases, it breaks it. But for those who do make it, that's like, I'm all about that.
Yeah.
I'll plant 100 seeds, and if only one survives, I'm stoked, because I'm still stoked that one thing fucking made it.
Yeah. When people ask me for advice on their own entrepreneurial journey, or like, what did I do to get to where I'm at? And I'm not anywhere special with anything. I run an agency. I feel like I'm doing decently well. But when I get asked that question, it's always hard for me to give an honest answer, because there's not really an easy way for me to explain it, or also encourage somebody to go through the trials and errors that I have been through. It's like, do you really want to learn it? Like, it was years of getting by and trying certain things, and being in like uncomfortable growth situations without certain stabilities along entrepreneurship. Totally. So it's just interesting when I get that question. I always hesitate. I'm like, do I give the real answer to this? Because I don't know if I would encourage everybody to go through that journey of uncertainty. So it's interesting saying that. I don't really know when or how sometimes to encourage somebody to take that journey of entrepreneurship, or like what path makes the most sense for them. When I look at my own side, I'm like, yeah, it was not easy at all times. There was a lot of uncertainty, and things could have taken a left or right. I could have been much more successful or much less successful around any corner. But it's what you're speaking about.
Well, I mean, look, I'm in my 17th year of being an entrepreneur, and there are still moments like that for me.
Yeah.
There's still times where I'm like, I feel like I'm flat broke, and I'm like, okay, wait a second, I spent all my money trying to like scale the farm or do this thing or do the other thing or like invest in this one like random part of storytelling that I'm just all of a sudden obsessed with and I'm trying to learn the parameters of. I don't know that you ever. I think you just get comfortable.
Exactly. Comfortable in the discomfort. Yeah, comfortable in the discomfort
Yeah.
and like being able to, the first time we met or one of the first times, one of the first conversations we ever had was, I'm figuring out just as much as you are. And that's been an evolving
Recurring
theme
theme.
in our conversations.
Yep.
Is you just get a lot better in becoming comfortable in uncomfortable conversations and a lot more trust in your ability to
Meet the moment.
fly on the way down.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a big one. And it's still, I think you never stop growing from that process. But that's the biggest thing is
It's
just
still
getting more
true.
comfortable with it.
I remind people of this all the time. They're like, oh, but what about the answer to this? And they're like asking me stuff about the future of the farm and like where it's going to be in 5 years. And I'm like, guys, like, I'm sorry, but I don't know about you, but have you ever built a village in your life? I was like, I've never done this before either, and like I've learned a couple of things and I'm kind of effective at it now. And I say kind of because from my perspective, I'm still got tons to learn. But when I look back or when I look at other people, I'm like, okay, yeah, wow. Okay, I've learned a thing or two.
Yeah.
But I just get back to, and what I'm like, my word for the year is like infrastructure. You say it subtly, and I think it goes over people's heads when you're talking about like working on the business versus in the business.
Yeah.
Or standardizing practices, and you use the word SOPs, right? Which is basically that. It's that. Like it's the investment in those little details that make the compounding conditions happen.